The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal dome of Galactic Research Station Harmony. Dr. Kai-Yun stood at the observation deck, watching the stars twinkle in the distance. His coffee cup steamed in his hands as he thought about the message that had arrived 3 days ago, first contact. After 3,000 years of peace, someone had finally answered humanity's call to the stars. Kai had lived his entire life during the Great Peace. Born on Earth 52 years ago, he had never seen war, never heard the sound of weapons firing in anger, never watched ships burn in the void. His grandfather used to tell stories about the old days, about the great wars that had nearly destroyed humanity in the 22nd century, but those were just stories now. Ancient history. Humanity had learned from its mistakes and chosen a better path. The doors behind him opened with a soft whisper. Jin Lee walked in, carrying his own cup of coffee and a datapad filled with equations. At 19 years old, Jin was the youngest researcher ever accepted into the Galactic Research program. His work on quantum consciousness theory had impressed even the most senior scientists on Earth. Kai had taken the young man under his wing 6 months ago, and Jin had already contributed more to their understanding of the universe than most scientists did in their entire careers. "Good morning, Dr. Yun," Jin said, settling into the chair next to his mentor. "I finished the calculations you asked for. The quantum signatures are even more interesting than we thought." Kai smiled. Jin's enthusiasm reminded him of himself at that age, though he had never been quite so brilliant. "Show me what you found." Jin activated his datapad, and holographic equations filled the air between them. The consciousness patterns in young humans are different from older ones. More flexible, more adaptable. It's like our brains are designed to change and grow until we reach our mid-20s, then they stabilize into fixed patterns. "Fascinating," Kai said, studying the data. "This could explain why humans adapt so quickly to new environments and technologies. Our young minds are literally designed to learn and change." Through the observation deck windows they could see the sleek form of the research vessel Serenity docked at the station. Captain Hannah Park would be arriving soon to brief them on the first contact mission. Hannah was one of the best ship commanders in the human fleet, though the fleet had not seen real action in 3 millennia. These days, ships like Serenity were used for exploration and research, not war. The communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Yun, please report to Conference Room Alpha. The aliens have sent another message." Kai and Jin exchanged excited glances. They had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. Conference Room Alpha was filled with the station's senior staff. Captain Hannah Park stood at the front of the room, her uniform crisp and her expression calm. At 43, she had spent her entire career in peaceful space, mapping star systems and conducting scientific surveys. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had never known fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hannah began, "we have received a detailed communication from the beings calling themselves the Valkyrie. They appear to be a peaceful species interested in cultural and scientific exchange." She activated the main display, and an image appeared. The Valkyrie were tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. They wore simple robes and moved with graceful, flowing motions. Everything about them suggested peace and wisdom. "They have requested permission to dock with our station," Hannah continued. "Their message indicates they are particularly interested in human consciousness and the way our minds work. They say their own species has studied consciousness for thousands of years, and they believe humans may have unique insights to offer." Dr. Su Min, the station's chief physicist, raised her hand. "Have they provided any information about their technology? I'm curious about how they achieved faster-than-light travel." "They have shared basic information," Hannah replied. "Their technology appears to be based on quantum manipulation, similar to our own but more advanced. They've offered to share knowledge in exchange for the opportunity to study human consciousness patterns." Kai felt his heart racing. This was exactly the kind of opportunity that could advance human science by centuries. What kind of study are they proposing? Non-invasive neural scans, Hannah said. They've assured us the procedures are completely harmless. They're particularly interested in young human minds, as they believe youth provides the clearest examples of consciousness in development. Jin leaned forward eagerly. I volunteer? My research is already focused on consciousness theory. Being able to contribute to first contact would be an honor. Several other young researchers around the room nodded in agreement. The excitement in the room was obvious. This was history in the making. Ambassador Wu Bin, Earth's representative to the station, spoke up. I've reviewed their proposals with the Colonial Council. We have approval to proceed with initial contact. However, we'll maintain standard first contact protocols. All interactions will be monitored and recorded. Over the next several hours, they prepared for the Valkyrie arrival. The station's medical bay was equipped with monitoring devices to observe any procedures the aliens performed. Security was minimal. After 3,000 years of peace, humanity had little experience with threats. The guards carried stunners, designed to subdue unruly researchers or handle medical emergencies. When the Valkyrie ship finally docked, Kai was amazed by its beauty. The vessel seemed to be grown rather than built, with smooth, organic curves that caught and reflected light. In fascinating ways, no visible weapons, no armor plating, just elegant functionality. The Valkyrie delegation consisted of 5 individuals. Led by someone who introduced himself as Scholar Venth, they moved with liquid grace and spoke in soft, melodious voices. Their translator devices worked perfectly, converting their speech into clear, accented English. We are honored to meet the humans, Venth said, bowing deeply. Your species' reputation for curiosity and adaptability has reached even our distant worlds. We hope this meeting will be the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship. The first meetings went better than anyone had hoped. The Valkyrie were polite, respectful, and genuinely interested in human culture. They shared stories of their homeworld, a peaceful planet where their species had lived in harmony for millennia. They had no military, no weapons, no concept of war. They existed purely to learn and grow in knowledge. In return, the humans shared their own history, carefully edited to focus on the last 3,000 years of peace. The Great Wars were mentioned only briefly as ancient history, a dark period that humanity had moved beyond. The Valkyrie seemed pleased that humans had chosen the path of peace. Jin spent hours talking with the Valkyrie scientists about consciousness theory. Their knowledge was vast and deep, accumulated over thousands of years of study. They explained that consciousness was not just thought, but a form of energy that could be measured and understood. Young minds, they said, produced the purest and most powerful consciousness energy. Your mind is particularly fascinating, Scholar Venth told Jin. The patterns we detect suggest extraordinary potential. Would you be willing to participate in a detailed scan? We could learn much from studying a consciousness like yours. Jin looked at Kai, who nodded encouragingly. This was exactly why they were here. I would be honored, Jin said. As the day ended, Kai felt hopeful about the future. Humanity had finally found friends among the stars. The universe seemed a little less lonely, and the possibilities for learning and growth appeared endless. He had no idea that by agreeing to the scans, they had just signed Jin's death warrant. 3 weeks after the Valkyrie arrival, Jin Li felt different. He sat in the medical bay while Dr. Su Min ran her daily tests, trying not to show his worry. The neural scans with the Valkyrie had been fascinating at first. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, and the information they shared about consciousness was revolutionary, but something was wrong. Jin, can you solve this equation for me? Dr. Su Min asked, showing him a simple mathematics problem on her tablet. Jin stared at the numbers. A month ago, he could have solved complex quantum mechanics in his head. Now, basic algebra seemed difficult. The numbers swam before his eyes, and his head began to ache. I need a moment, he said, pressing his palms against his temples. Doctor Su Min frowned and made notes on her pad. How are you sleeping? Not well, strange dreams. Sometimes I forget where I'm when I wake up. Jin tried to smile, but it felt forced. Maybe I'm just tired from all the excitement. Across the station, Ambassador Wu Bin was having his own concerns. The Velkari had been model guests, polite and helpful in every way. But something about their requests bothered him. They had asked for detailed population records of human colonies. They wanted to know which worlds had the most young people. They seemed particularly interested in universities and research centers where brilliant young minds gathered. When Wu Bin asked why they needed this information, Scholar Venth had given a reasonable answer. We wish to share our consciousness. Research with as many promising young humans as possible. Knowledge should not be limited to just a few. It made sense. But Wu Bin had not survived 50 years of diplomacy without learning to trust his instincts. Something felt off. Dr. Su Min was having similar doubts in her laboratory. As the station's chief physicist, she had been given access to some Velkari technology for study. What she found disturbed her. The alien scanning devices were far more complex than they had claimed. The neural interfaces they used on human volunteers contained components that served no obvious scientific purpose. She ran another analysis on the quantum resonance patterns from Jin's last scan. The data showed something that made her blood run cold. Jin's consciousness patterns were not just being measured, they were being drained. Slowly, carefully, but definitely being taken away. Captain Park, I need to speak with you immediately. Su Min said into her communicator. Captain Hana Park arrived at the physics lab within minutes. She had been feeling uneasy about the Velkari for days but could not explain why. Her military training, limited as it was in this peaceful age, told her something was wrong. What did you find? Hana asked. Su Min showed her the data. The Velkari aren't just studying human consciousness. They're harvesting it. Look at these readings from Jin's scans over the past 3 weeks. The graphs were clear. Jin's consciousness patterns were steadily decreasing. Each scan left him weaker, less intelligent, less himself. How is that possible? Hana asked. I don't know, but it gets worse. I've been monitoring communications from other human stations and colonies. The Velkari aren't just here. They've made contact with 12 other human worlds. They're conducting the same research everywhere they go. Hana felt sick. How many young people are involved? At least 300 across all the contact sites. And they're all showing the same patterns Jin is. Degrading neural function, memory loss, difficulty with problem solving. They had been so trusting. 3,000 years of peace had made humanity forget that not everyone in the universe might have good intentions. The Velkari had seemed so wise, so peaceful. The idea that they might be predators had never occurred to anyone. We need to tell Dr. Yoon, Hana said. They found Kai in his quarters, reading reports from other research stations. His face was troubled. Kai, we have a problem, Su Min said. She explained her findings. Kai listened in growing horror as the truth became clear. His young protege, the brilliant boy he had come to think of as a son, was being slowly destroyed by creatures they had welcomed as friends. We have to stop the scans immediately, Kai said. I tried, Su Min replied. But Ambassador Wu Bin says we can't break our agreements with the Velkari without proof of hostile intent. The Colonial Council considers this a minor medical issue, not a threat. Minor medical issue? Kai's voice rose. They're destroying our children's minds? Hana put a hand on his shoulder. The problem is we don't understand how they're doing it. Without knowing their methods, we can't prove they're doing it deliberately. They could claim it's an unexpected side effect. Kai thought about Jin, about the confusion in the young man's eyes, about how his brilliant mind was being slowly erased. Anger began to build in his chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. In his peaceful world, there had never been reason for such rage. That evening, Kai visited Jin in the medical bay. The young man was sleeping, but his sleep was troubled. He muttered and tossed, lost in dreams that seemed more like nightmares. How is he? Kai asked the medical technician. Not good, sir. His brain scans show continued deterioration. If this continues, he'll suffer permanent damage within a week. Kai sat beside Jin's bed and watched the boy sleep. Jin had trusted him, they all had. The Valkyrie had seemed like a dream come true, bringing knowledge and friendship from the stars. Now that dream was becoming a nightmare. The next morning brought worse news. Reports came in from the other human worlds in contact with the Valkyrie. Young researchers and students were falling into comas. Some had died. The pattern was always the same, brilliant young minds being slowly drained until nothing was left. Doctor Su Min had spent the night analyzing more Valkyrie technology. What she found made everything clear. They're not just studying consciousness, she told the emergency meeting. They're feeding on it. The quantum resonance patterns show that consciousness energy is being transferred from human brains to Valkyrie devices. It's like they're eating our minds. Ambassador Wu Bin looked pale. Are you certain? Completely, and there's more. I found historical data in their ship's computers. They've done this before, many times. The Valkyrie have been traveling through the galaxy for thousands of years, finding species with young, adaptable minds and harvesting their consciousness. What happened to those other species? Captain Hannah asked. Su Min's voice was quiet. Most of them are extinct now. Those that survived lost their ability to innovate and adapt. They became stagnant, declining civilizations. The room fell silent. Humanity had found intelligent life among the stars, only to discover it was a predator that fed on the very thing that made humans special, their adaptable, creative minds. We have to warn Earth, Wu Bin said. The Valkyrie delegation there includes 50 of their people. They're conducting scans on students from the global university. Kai stood up. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had only read about in history books. He felt the kind of rage that had once driven his ancestors to create weapons that could crack planets and burn stars. No, he said quietly. First we stop them here. Jin and the others are still alive. We can still save them. How? Hannah asked. We don't have weapons. We don't know how to fight. Kai thought about his grandfather's stories, about the dark times when humanity had nearly destroyed itself learning the art of war. Those skills had been deliberately forgotten, buried under 3 millennia of peace. But knowledge, once learned, was never truly lost. Then we learn, Kai said, fast. Jin Li died at 3:47 in the morning on a Tuesday. Dr. Kai Yun was holding the young man's hand when it happened. Jin had been in a coma for 2 days, his brilliant mind slowly fading as the Valkyrie devices completed their harvest. The medical monitors showed the moment when his consciousness finally flickered out like a candle in the wind. Kai sat in the silence of the medical bay, staring at Jin's peaceful face. The boy looked like he was sleeping, but Kai knew better. There was nothing left inside that still form. No dreams, no thoughts, no spark of the genius that had made Jin special. The Valkyrie had taken it all, for the first time in his 52 years of life. Kai understood what hatred felt like. Captain Hannah Park found him there an hour later. She had come to deliver more bad news, but the words died in her throat when she saw Kai's expression. The gentle scientist she had known for years was gone. In his place sat someone she had never seen before, someone with eyes like winter storms. The reports from other worlds came in, Hannah said softly. 43 young people are dead, hundreds more are in comas. Kai did not look away from Jin's face. How long have they been doing this? Su Min found more data in their computers. At least 5,000 years, maybe longer. Hannah sat down beside him. They've destroyed entire civilizations, Kai. The Altarians went extinct 3 centuries ago. The Zephyrians lost their ability to innovate and became a slave race, species after species, all following the same pattern. And now it's our turn, Kai said. His voice was calm, but something in it made Hannah shiver. The Valkyrie are requesting permission to expand their research to Earth's universities. The Colonial Council is considering approval. They think this is just an unfortunate accident. Kai finally looked at her. Accident? The official report calls it unforeseen neural compatibility issues. Ambassador Wu Bin tried to stop it, But the Council believes the Valkyries promise that they can fix the problem. Kai stood up slowly. Where are the historical archives? What archives? The war archives. The records from before the Great Peace. Kai's voice was getting colder. My grandfather used to tell stories about the old days, about what humans were like before we learned to be civilized. Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. Kai, those records are classified, sealed by the peace accords. No one has accessed them in centuries. Then it's time someone did. Fleet Admiral Dong Haiyan was 93 years old and one of the few humans alive who remembered studying the Forbiddance histories. As a young officer in the Colonial Defense Force, he had been required to learn about humanity's violent past as a warning of what they must never become again. When Dr. Kai-Yun appeared in his office demanding access to the sealed archives, Dong Haiyan saw something in the scientist's eyes that he recognized from those old records. It was the look of a human who had been pushed too far. You know what you're asking for? The old admiral said. Those archives contain the darkest chapters of human history, things we swore to never remember. They killed Jin, Kai said simply, a 19-year-old boy who wanted nothing more than to understand the universe. They drained his mind like a battery and threw away what was left. Dong Haiyan was quiet for a long moment. He had read the reports. He knew what the Valkyrie were doing, but he also knew what humanity had done to itself when it embraced its violent nature. If I give you access to those files, there's no going back. Once you see what we really are underneath all this peace, you can't unsee it. Good, Kai said. I don't want to unsee it. I want to remember what we forgot. The war archives were stored in a vault deep beneath the Colonial Defense Headquarters. The room had not been opened in over a century. Dust covered everything, and the air recycling system had to be restarted before anyone could breathe safely. Master, Tactician Yuna was the only person on the station with the proper clearance to access the files. At 67, she had spent her career studying theoretical conflicts that would never happen. Now, faced with a real enemy, she felt both terrified and strangely excited. These are the records from the Great Wars, she told Kai as the Ancient. Computers came online. 200 years of conflict that nearly destroyed our species. Planet crackers, star killers, weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. The holographic displays filled with images that made Kai's stomach turn. Planets burning, cities melting under nuclear fire, fleets of warships fighting battles that killed billions. This was what his ancestors had been capable of when pushed to war, but as he studied the records, Kai began to understand something else. Humanity had not just been good at destroying things. They had been good at winning. Every enemy they faced, no matter how advanced or powerful, had eventually fallen to human tactics and human weapons. Look at this, Yuna said, pointing to a tactical analysis, the Centauri Rebellion. The rebels had better technology, better ships, and numerical advantage. But humans adapted faster. Every battle, they learned something new. By the end of the war, human tactics were so advanced that other species studied them for centuries. What about this one? Kai indicated another file. The android wars, artificial intelligences that could think 1,000 times faster than humans. They should have won easily. But humans didn't fight them directly. They found weaknesses, exploited flaws, turned the AI's own strengths against them. File after file showed the same pattern. Humanity facing impossible odds and finding ways to win, not through superior technology or numbers, but through adaptability, creativity, and sheer determination. We weren't just warriors, Kai realized. We were the best warriors. Admiral Dong Haiyan joined them in the archive room. His face was grim as he watched Kai and Yuna study the records. This is why we sealed these files, he said. Not because we were ashamed of losing wars, but because we were too good at winning them. When humans go to war, we don't just fight. We perfect the art of destruction. More reports arrived from other worlds. The Valkyrie were accelerating their operations. University students across human space were being subjected to neural scans. The death toll was rising rapidly. Dr. Su Min, entered the archive room carrying a datapad filled with intercepted Valkyrie communications. Her translation programs had finally broken their encryption. "You need to see this," she said. Activating the display, the communications were between Scholar Venth and someone called the Harvest Master. The language was cold and clinical as they discussed their operations. "The human young produce exceptional consciousness energy," one message read. "Much higher quality than previous species. We should harvest as many as possible before they become aware of our activities." Another message was even worse. "The breeding populations show promising genetic markers. After harvest, we can establish permanent farms on their worlds. Estimated sustainable yield, 50,000 units per generation." Kai felt something break inside him as he read those words. Units, the Valkyrie, thought of human children as units to be harvested. "There's more," Sumin said. "They've done this to over 200 species. Most are extinct. The survivors have been turned into livestock, kept alive only to produce more young minds for harvest." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity was not facing an enemy that wanted to conquer them or enslave them. They were facing predators who wanted to farm them like cattle. Admiral Dong Haiyan looked at the faces around him. He saw the same expression on each one, the cold fury of a species that had been pushed beyond its limits. "How long do we have?" he asked. "The main Valkyrie fleet will arrive in 6 months," Su Min replied. 5,000 ships carrying harvest. Equipment for the entire human population. Kai stood up from the computer terminal. In his hands was a data crystal containing the complete war archives, 3,000 years of forbidden knowledge about humanity's capacity for violence. "Then, we have 6 months to remember how to be human," he said. The funeral for Jin Li was held in the station's observation deck. 50 people gathered to say goodbye to the young man whose death had changed everything. Dr. Kai-Yun stood at the front, holding a small container with Jin's personal effects. Research notes, family photos, and a half-finished equation about consciousness that would never be completed. Jin wanted to understand the universe, Kai said to the assembled mourners. He believed that knowledge was the greatest gift anyone could give or receive. He died because he trusted beings who saw his brilliant mind as nothing more than food. "Captain." Hannah Park watched Kai's face as he spoke. The gentle scientist was gone forever. In his place stood someone harder, colder, driven by a purpose that frightened her. She had seen the same transformation in others over the past week. Peaceful researchers. And diplomats were becoming something else entirely. "The Valkyrie call us cattle," Kai continued. "They think we are weak because we chose peace. They think 3,000 years of harmony has made us helpless." His voice grew quieter but somehow more dangerous. They are about to learn how wrong they are. After the service, reports continued to arrive from across human space. The pattern was always the same. Young people falling into comas, dying while their elders watched helplessly. The Colonial Council was still trying to handle the situation. Through diplomacy, refusing to believe the evidence of deliberate malice. Dr. Su Min burst into the command center with news that made everyone's blood run cold. "They've started taking children," she announced. "The Valkyrie on Earth have requested access to primary schools. They claim they want to study how young human minds develop. The Education Ministry approved it." Kai closed his eyes and felt something snap inside his chest. Adults dying was terrible. Children being harvested was unforgivable. "How many?" he asked. "The first group is 500 children between ages 6 and 12. The most gifted students from around the world." Admiral Dong Haiyan slammed his fist on the table. "That's enough. We're not waiting for the Colonial Council anymore." He activated the station's emergency communication system and began sending coded messages to every human military installation in the galaxy. The codes were ancient, dating back to the Great Wars, but military computers still recognized them. Across human space, officers who had never expected to see real combat began receiving activation orders. General B.O. Rem was commanding a supply depot in the Tau SETI system when the message arrived. Like most military officers, she had spent her career managing logistics and running training exercises. Real war was something that happened in history books. The activation code changed everything. Ancient protocols locked away for 3 millennia suddenly became active. Computer systems that had been dormant for centuries began powering up. Weapons manufacturing facilities that had been converted to civilian use reverted to their original purpose. "Sir, I'm reading massive power draws from the old military sectors," her aide reported. "Systems I didn't even know existed are coming online." BioRam pulled up the classified schematics. Hidden beneath every major human colony were facilities that the peace accords had ordered sealed but never destroyed. Weapons factories, ship construction yards, research laboratories dedicated to the science of war. "How long to bring everything fully online?" she asked. 72 hours for basic operations. 2 weeks for full combat readiness. Commander Taehyung received his orders while conducting a routine patrol near the Kepler system. His ship, the Guardian, was officially a research vessel. But like all human ships built in the past 1,000 years, it had been designed with hidden capabilities. Peaceful exploration ships that could transform into warships when necessary. "Activate military configuration," he ordered his crew. The ship shuddered as hidden systems came to life. Armor plating extended from concealed compartments. Weapon ports opened along the hull. The Guardian's sensor array reconfigured itself for combat operations. In 30 minutes, a peaceful research vessel became a predator designed to hunt and kill. Similar transformations were happening across human space. Exploration ships became destroyers. Mining stations became weapons platforms. Even civilian transport vessels revealed military capabilities that had been built into their design but never used. The Valkyrie noticed none of this. They were too focused on their harvest operations to pay attention to what their prey was doing. Scholar Venth continued his work on the research station, conducting scans on the remaining human volunteers. He seemed genuinely puzzled by their deteriorating condition, maintaining the pretense that these were unfortunate side effects. Captain Hannah Park found herself studying tactical manuals that had been classified for 3,000 years. The knowledge felt strange in her mind, like remembering a language she had never learned. But as she read about fleet formations and battle strategies, something deep in her human DNA responded. "The key to victory is not superior firepower," she read from an ancient text. "It is superior adaptation. Humans win because we learn faster than our enemies. Every battle teaches us something new." Dr. Kai-Yun was learning too, but his education was darker. In the sealed archives, he discovered weapons that made nuclear bombs look like children's toys. Planet crackers that could split worlds in half. Star killers that could make suns go supernova. Quantum viruses that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. "We built these things?" he asked Master Tactician Yuna. "We built worse things," she replied. "The files you're looking at are just the conventional weapons. The really terrible ones are classified at levels we can't access." "What could be worse than destroying planets?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Consciousness bombs. Weapons that don't kill the body, but destroy the mind. Your ancestors used them in the android wars. The artificial intelligences didn't have bodies to kill, so humans found ways to kill their thoughts instead." Kai felt sick, but also strangely satisfied. If the Valkyrie wanted to feed on consciousness, humanity had weapons designed specifically to destroy it. The first test came 3 days later. A Valkyrie science ship arrived at the research station, requesting permission to conduct expanded studies. The ship carried advanced harvesting equipment and a crew of 20 consciousness feeders. Scholar Venth greeted the new arrivals with obvious pleasure. "Excellent timing. We have identified several more promising subjects for detailed study." Captain Hannah Park met the Valkyrie delegation at the docking bay. She smiled warmly and spoke in the same polite tones she had used for weeks. But her crew was different now. Each human carried weapons that looked like standard stunners, but had been modified with technology from the war archives. "Welcome to Research Station Harmony," Hannah said. "We're always happy to help our new friends." The Valkyrie filed through the airlock, trusting and unsuspecting. They had no concept of deception or violence. In their experience, species that had achieved space travel were peaceful by nature. The idea that humans might be pretending friendship while planning murder never occurred to them. They were halfway to the conference room. When Hana gave the signal, the modified stunners fired quantum disruptors instead of neural dampeners. The Valkyrie consciousness feeders collapsed instantly, their ability to process thought completely destroyed. They were alive but empty, exactly what they had been doing to human children. "Secure the ship," Hannah ordered. "I want everything. Technology, data files, communication logs. And find out where their harvest ships are located." Within hours, they had a complete picture of Valkyrie operations. 15 worlds were being harvested simultaneously. Thousands more young humans were marked for collection. The main fleet was already 2 months into its journey to Earth. Dr. Kai-Yun stood over the fallen Valkyrie in the medical bay. They lay there like broken dolls, their large eyes staring at nothing. The consciousness that had once filled those alien minds was gone forever. "How does it feel?" he asked them, knowing they could not answer. "How does it feel to have your mind taken away?" Admiral Dong Haiyan found him there later. The old man looked at the empty Valkyrie and nodded with satisfaction. "The war has begun," he said. "Good," Kai replied. "Let's show them what 3,000 years of peace was really preparing us for." The first human warship to emerge from the hidden shipyards was the Vengeance. Built in just 2 weeks using technology that had been buried for 3,000 years, it was a monster of black metal and quantum fire. Captain Hannah Park stood on its bridge, watching as more ships joined the growing fleet. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction. The Retribution carried weapons that could crack planets. The Fury mounted consciousness bombs that could destroy minds across entire star systems. The Wrath was armed with temporal weapons that could age enemy ships to dust in seconds. These were not the elegant exploration vessels humanity had built during its peaceful age. These were killing machines, designed by ancestors who had perfected the art of war. Status report. Hannah ordered. Commander Tae-hyung consulted his tactical display. 47 battle cruisers operational. 112 destroyers ready for combat. The dreadnought apocalypse will be completed in 3 days. What about the special weapons? Dr. Yoon's consciousness bombs are being loaded onto the Nightmare as we speak. Chief Engineer Dae-yoon has finished the quantum virus warheads. And Dr. Seung-ho's biological weapons are ready for deployment. Hannah nodded grimly. In the past month, humanity had remembered how to be monsters. The peaceful scientists and engineers who had built better telescopes and faster computers had transformed into weapons designers who crafted tools of absolute destruction. Dr. Kai-Yun was no longer the gentle researcher who had welcomed the Valkyrie with open arms. He stood in his new laboratory, surrounded by devices that would have horrified his former self. The consciousness bombs floating in containment fields were his proudest creation, weapons that could destroy a mind while leaving the body untouched. "The irony is perfect," he told his assistant. "They want to feed on consciousness, so we'll give them consciousness to feed on. But this consciousness will be poison. It will burn through their minds like acid." Chief Engineer Dae-yoon had been a builder of peaceful space stations just weeks ago. Now she designed quantum viruses that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Her latest creation could make gravity work backwards, causing enemy ships to tear themselves apart. The beautiful thing about fighting aliens," she explained to her team, "is that we don't have to worry about war crimes. The Geneva Conventions only protect humans." Dr. Seung-ho had spent his career studying alien biology to better understand consciousness. That same knowledge now served a darker purpose. His biological weapons were specifically designed to target Valkyrie physiology, viruses that would make their blue skin melt, toxins that would cause their internal organs to dissolve. "They see U.S. as cattle," he said while reviewing his latest creations. "But cattle don't usually bite back." The transformation was not limited to weapons and ships. Human society itself was changing. The Colonial Council had been dissolved, replaced by a war command structure that operated with military efficiency. Civilians trained for combat. Children learned to use weapons instead of studying art and literature. Master, tactician Yuna had become the strategic brain of the human war machine. Her peaceful career studying theoretical conflicts had prepared her perfectly for real warfare. She stood before a massive holographic display showing the positions of every Valkyrie ship in known space. They move in predictable patterns, she told the assembled fleet commanders. They're not warriors, they're farmers. They approach each world the same way, establish the same research stations, follow the same harvest protocols. How do we use that against them? Asked General B.O. Ram, we turn their predictability into a trap. They expect frightened cattle. Instead, they'll find apex predators. The first field test came when a Valkyrie harvest ship arrived at the agricultural world of New Eden. The planet was home to 50,000 colonists, including 3,000 children at the colony schools. According to intercepted communications, the aliens planned to harvest every young mind on the planet. The Valkyrie ship, Abundance, entered orbit around New Eden exactly as Yuna had predicted. Captain Vorth, the ship's commander, sent the standard peaceful greeting to the human colony below. Greetings, young humans. We come to share knowledge and study your fascinating consciousness patterns. Please prepare your most gifted children for neural scanning. Governor Min Ho, the colony's leader, responded with appropriate fear and confusion. We don't understand. What kind of scanning? Is it safe? Completely harmless, Captain Vorth assured him. We have conducted thousands of such scans across the galaxy. Your children will be helping advance the cause of universal knowledge. What Captain Vorth could not see was the human battle fleet hiding behind New Eden's moon. 12 warships waited in perfect silence, their weapons charged and ready. The Vengeance led the formation, with Captain Hannah Park watching the alien ship through her tactical display. Target acquired, reported her weapons officer. Consciousness bombs armed and ready. Fire, Hannah ordered. The weapons that struck the Abundance were invisible to normal sensors. They passed through the ship's shields as if they did not exist, because they were not designed to damage matter. Instead, they targeted something far more fundamental, the thoughts and awareness of every living being aboard the vessel. Captain Vorth felt the weapon hit his mind like a sledgehammer. His consciousness began to burn as the poisoned thoughts invaded his neural pathways. Around him, his crew collapsed as their minds were consumed from within, but the consciousness bombs were only the beginning. As the Valkyrie crew writhed in mental agony, human boarding pods launched from the attacking fleet. The pods were filled with soldiers wearing armor that would have been familiar to warriors from humanity's ancient past, but enhanced with technology beyond anything the peaceful age had ever produced. Commander Taehyung led the boarding party onto the alien ship. His armor sensors showed him exactly where each Valkyrie was located and what condition their minds were in. Most were already brain-dead from the consciousness bombs. The few survivors were easily captured. Secure the harvest equipment, he ordered his troops. I want everything they use to drain minds. We're going to turn their own tools against them. The battle for the Abundance lasted exactly 14 minutes. When it was over, the entire Valkyrie crew was either dead or mindless. Their ship, with all its advanced technology and harvest equipment, belonged to humanity, but Captain Hannah Park was not satisfied with just capturing one ship. She activated the Abundance's communication system and sent a message to every Valkyrie vessel in the galaxy. This is Captain Hannah Park of the human battle fleet. You made a mistake when you decided to feed on our children. You thought we were weak because we chose peace. You thought 3,000 years of harmony meant we had forgotten how to fight. She paused, letting her words sink in across the vastness of space. You were wrong. We didn't forget how to fight. We just got better at it. Every ship you send, we will destroy. Every world you try to harvest, we will defend. Every one of your kind that we capture will experience exactly what you did to our young. We will drain their minds and leave them. Empty, the message continued transmitting to every corner of Valkyrie space. You wanted to farm us like cattle. Instead, you have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Humanity is coming for you? All of you. And when we are finished, your species will serve as a warning to anyone else who thinks human children are prey. Across the galaxy, Valkyrie commanders received the transmission with growing horror. They had never encountered a species that responded to predation with such focused violence. Their own peaceful nature made it impossible for them to truly understand what they had awakened. Dr. Kai-Yun watched the transmission from his laboratory aboard the Vengeance. Around him, consciousness bombs floated in their containment fields like captured nightmares, ready to be deployed against any alien mind foolish enough to threaten humanity's young. Jin, he whispered to the memory of his dead student, this is for you, for all of them. The arsenal of humanity was fully awakened now. 3,000 years of suppressed violence, refined by millennia of technological advancement, focused into weapons of unimaginable destruction, the Valkyrie had wanted. To harvest human consciousness, now they would discover what that consciousness was truly capable of when turned toward war. The hunt began at the edge of Valkyrie space. Human fleets, dark as the void between stars, moved through the galaxy with one purpose, to find and destroy every ship that had dared to harvest their young. They no longer moved like the peaceful explorers they had once been. Now they moved like wolves hunting sheep. Strike Team Leader Min Ho crouched in the shadows of an asteroid field, watching a Valkyrie research station through his helmet's sensors. The station was built into a small moon, its organic curves glowing softly in the starlight. According to intelligence reports, this facility had processed the consciousness of over 10,000 young beings from dozens of species. Target confirmed. He whispered into his communicator. The Harvest Moon Station is operational. Estimated crew of 200 Valkyrie researchers. Captain Hannah Park's voice crackled back through space. Any human prisoners? Negative. This appears to be a processing center. They bring the harvested consciousness here to refine it before shipping it to their homeworlds, then burn it down. Min Ho's team moved with the deadly precision of apex predators. They had spent the past 2 months hunting Valkyrie across the galaxy, and each battle had made them more efficient killers. The peaceful humans who had once welcomed alien visitors were gone forever, replaced by something far more dangerous. The assault began with quantum mines. Placed along the station's main power conduits, Dr. Yun-ji had designed the explosives to feed on the station's own energy, growing stronger as they consumed the alien technology. When they detonated, the resulting cascade would tear the facility apart from within, but destruction was not enough. Humanity wanted information. Min Ho's soldiers flowed through the station's corridors like a black tide. Their armor was designed to be silent, nearly invisible, and completely lethal. The Valkyrie researchers they encountered died before they could even understand what was happening. The few aliens who survived the initial assault found themselves facing something worse than death. Human scientists like Dr. Kai-Yun had perfected techniques for extracting information directly from alien minds. The process was agonizing and usually fatal, but it provided invaluable intelligence about Valkyrie operations. Where are your breeding worlds? Min Ho asked the captured station commander. The alien writhed in the neural interface chair, its blue skin turning pale with pain. Please, we meant no harm. We only sought knowledge, You harvested children, Min Ho replied coldly. Where are your breeding worlds? The information extraction took 3 hours. By the end, the human strike team had complete data on 17 Valkyrie core worlds, each one home to billions of consciousness feeders. They also discovered something that made their blood run cold: vast farms where captured species were kept. Like livestock, bred specifically to produce young minds for harvest. Among the imprisoned species were the remnants of civilizations the Valkyrie had destroyed centuries ago. Beings who had once traveled the stars, now reduced to breeding stock for alien predators. Sir, one of Min Ho's soldiers reported, you need to see this. The holding cells beneath the station contained creatures that had once been intelligent. Their eyes held the dull emptiness of minds that had been partially harvested, leaving them aware enough to suffer but too damaged to think clearly. Some had been kept alive for decades, producing offspring that would be harvested in turn.min. Ho felt something break inside him as he looked at the prisoners. These beings had families once, dreams, hopes for the future. The Valkyrie had turned them into nothing more than breeding animals. Free them all, he ordered. And make sure the station's destruction is slow enough for the Valkyrie to feel it. Across the galaxy, similar raids were taking place. Human strike teams had become legendary among the remaining Valkyrie forces, ghosts that appeared without warning, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The aliens began to understand that they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey. Master Tactician Yu Na studied the tactical display in her command center, watching as red dots representing Valkyrie forces slowly disappeared from the galactic map. Each dot that vanished represented another enemy facility destroyed, another harvest operation shut down, another group of consciousness feeders sent to whatever waited beyond death. Status report, she requested. 73 Valkyrie installations destroyed in the past week, her aide reported. Enemy fleet strength reduced by approximately 40%. Our losses remain minimal. What about their homeworlds? Long-range reconnaissance confirms they're pulling back all harvest operations to defend their core systems. They're abandoning their frontier bases and concentrating their forces. Yuna smiled grimly. Good, let them huddle together. It will make them easier to kill. The transformation of human society continued. Factories that had once produced peaceful goods now manufactured weapons of war. Universities taught courses in alien biology alongside lessons in the most efficient ways to kill. Children played games that simulated the destruction of Valkyrie fleets. Dr. Sung Ho had become one of the most feared humans in the galaxy. His biological weapons had evolved beyond simple toxins to become something approaching art. His latest creation was a virus that would rewrite Valkyrie DNA, turning their own healing processes against them. An infected alien would slowly dissolve from within while remaining conscious throughout the entire process. Poetic justice, he explained to his research team. They wanted to feed on consciousness. Now they can experience every moment of their own destruction. But perhaps the most terrifying development was the work of Dr. Kai Yoon. His consciousness bombs had evolved into something even more deadly, weapons that could not only destroy minds, but could also corrupt them. Valkyrie, exposed to his latest creations, would experience madness, paranoia, and overwhelming terror before their consciousness finally burned out completely. Fear is the most basic emotion, he told his assistants as they loaded the new weapons onto human warships. These creatures have never known fear because they've always been the predators. We're going to teach them what it feels like to be prey. The first major battle came when a human fleet encountered a Valkyrie defense force protecting one of their breeding worlds. The alien fleet consisted of 300 ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had possessed during its peaceful age, but the Valkyrie had made a critical error. They fought like farmers trying to protect their livestock. Humans fought like apex predators defending their young. Captain Hannah Park commanded the human fleet from the Bridge of the Vengeance. Her tactical display showed the enemy formation, a defensive screen designed to protect the planet below where thousands of captured beings were kept in breeding facilities. All ships, this is the vengeance, she broadcast. Remember what they did to our children, show them no mercy. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries to come. The Valkyrie fleet had superior numbers and technology, but they had no experience fighting an enemy that adapted in real time. Every tactic they tried, humans countered within minutes. Every weapon they deployed, humans found a weakness to exploit. The consciousness bombs struck first, turning entire Valkyrie crews into mindless husks. Then came the quantum viruses, rewriting the laws of physics around enemy ships and causing them to tear themselves apart. Biological weapons followed, designed specifically to cause maximum suffering to alien physiology, but the most devastating weapon was human creativity. Each ship captain fought differently, adapting their tactics to exploit whatever weakness they could find. The Valkyrie, who thought in rigid patterns developed over millennia, could not cope with such fluid adaptive warfare. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Valkyrie defense fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped. The breeding world below now lay defenseless before the human fleet. Commence planetary liberation, Captain Hannah Park ordered. As human troops descended to free the imprisoned species, they found horrors beyond imagination. Beings kept in cages, their young regularly taken for harvest. Creatures so damaged by partial consciousness extraction that they could barely remember their own names. But they also found something else: gratitude. As the freed prisoners looked up at their human rescuers, they saw in human eyes the cold fire of a species that would never stop hunting until every last Valkyrie was dead. The message spread across the galaxy through channels the Valkyrie could not monitor. Humanity was coming, and they would not stop until every consciousness feeder in the universe had paid for their crimes. The hunt would continue until there was nothing left to hunt. The last Valkyrie died on a Tuesday morning at 11:47, Galactic Standard Time. Dr. Kai Yun watched through the observation window as the final consciousness feeder expired in the research laboratory. The alien's large eyes, once filled with the cruel intelligence of a predator, now stared at nothing. Its blue skin had turned pale and cold. After 6 months of war, the species that had harvested young minds across the galaxy for 5,000 years was extinct, almost extinct. In cages throughout the laboratory, the last 36 Valkyrie survivors waited for their turn. These were not warriors or leaders; those had died fighting human fleets above their home worlds. These were scientists and researchers, the ones who had designed the consciousness harvesting technology, who had perfected the art of draining young minds. They would not die quickly. Status report, Kai requested from his assistant. Subject 847 expired after 96 hours of consciousness extraction, the young scientist replied. Neural patterns show complete awareness throughout the process. It experienced every moment of its mind being drained. Kai nodded with satisfaction. The irony was perfect. The Valkyrie had spent millennia feeding on the consciousness of children, treating their victims' minds as nothing more than energy to be consumed. Now they were experiencing the same fate, but with human efficiency, making the process far more thorough and painful. Prepare the next subject, he ordered. Outside the laboratory, the galaxy was transforming under human rule. The war had lasted 8 months and had ended with the complete extinction of Valkyrie civilization. Their homeworlds were ash, their fleets scattered debris, their technology claimed by human forces, but humanity had not stopped there. Chancellor Ji Wu stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species in the Grand Council chamber. On Earth, these were the survivors' civilizations that had been harvested by the Valkyrie, reduced to livestock, kept alive only to produce young minds for alien consumption. The threat is ended, she announced to the gathering. The last Valkyrie installations have been destroyed. The consciousness feeders will never again prey upon our children. The assembled delegates responded with cheers, tears, and expressions of gratitude in hundreds of different languages. Some of these beings had been slaves for centuries. Others were the descendants of species that had forgotten what freedom meant. However, Chancellor Ji Wu continued, and the chamber fell silent, we must ensure this never happens again. The galaxy needs protection. It needs guardians who will never again allow predators to hunt the innocent. Master Tactician Yu Na activated the holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed the entire galaxy with human fleets positioned at strategic points throughout known space. From this day forward, humanity will serve as the galaxy's protectors, Yu Na announced. We will monitor all species for signs of predatory behavior. We will investigate any reports of consciousness harvesting or similar crimes. And we will respond to threats with the full force of human military power. The new doctrine was called Vigilant Harmony, peace maintained through overwhelming strength and constant watchfulness. It was a far cry from the passive pacifism that had allowed the Valkyrie to operate unchallenged for millennia. Memorial Keeper Hyun-soo stood in the Hall of Remembrance, polishing the quantum crystal tablets that bore the names of every victim. Jin Lee's name was at the top of the list, carved in letters that would last until the heat death of the universe. Below his name were thousands of others, humans, Altarians, Zephyrians, and dozens of species whose young minds had been harvested by alien predators. "We remember them all," Hyun-soo said to the visiting school children who came to learn about the war, every child who was taken, every brilliant mind that was drained, every dream that was destroyed. "We remember so that we never forget why we fight." The children listened with wide eyes as she told them about the time before the war, when humanity believed the universe was peaceful and safe. They could barely imagine such innocence. These children had been born into a galaxy where humanity stood as the ultimate predator, where human fleets patrolled the darkness between stars, where alien species whispered warnings about what happened. To those who threatened human young, Captain Hannah Park walked through the ruins of the Valkyrie homeworld. The planet's surface was blackened glass, melted by weapons that had made stars themselves burn cold. Nothing lived here now except the memories of what had been done. She stopped at the simple monument that human engineers had erected in the center of what had once been the Valkyrie capital city. The inscription was carved in every known language, a message that would endure long after the ruins themselves had crumbled to dust. "They touched our young. We responded accordingly." Those 8 words had become humanity's warning to the galaxy. They were painted on the sides of human warships, carved into the walls of military installations, and taught to children in schools across human space. Any species that encountered humans learned those words quickly. Dr. Seung-ho continued his work in the biological warfare laboratories, but his focus had shifted. Instead of creating weapons to kill Valkyrie, he now developed defenses against other potential threats. His latest project was a virus that could detect and neutralize any attempt at consciousness harvesting, protecting young minds from future predators. "We know there are other species out there," he told his research team. "Other consciousness feeders hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. When they reveal themselves, we'll be ready." The transformation of human society was complete. The peaceful civilization that had once welcomed alien visitors with open arms was gone forever. In its place stood something harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous. Humanity had remembered what it truly was beneath 3,000 years of imposed peace, the galaxy's apex predator, but the change went deeper than just military might. Human children learned different lessons now. They studied alien biology alongside mathematics, learned to recognize signs of predatory behavior, and trained with weapons from an early age. The innocence that had made them vulnerable to the Valkyrie would never return. Dr. Kai-Yoon finished his work in the laboratory as the last Valkyrie test subject finally died. The creature had lasted 4 days while human technology slowly drained its consciousness, giving it a taste of what thousands of harvested children had experienced. He sealed the laboratory and walked to his private office, where a single photograph sat on his desk. Jin Lee smiled out from the picture, young and brilliant and full of hope for the future. The boy who had wanted nothing more than to understand the universe, who had died because he trusted beings that saw his mind as food. "It's finished, Jin," Kai said to the photograph. "They're all dead, every last one of them." But even as he spoke the words, Kai knew the war was not truly over. It would never be over. Humanity had learned that the universe was full of predators, and the only way to protect the innocent was to be the most dangerous predator of all. Across the galaxy, human fleets continued their patrols. Human scientists developed new weapons. Human children trained for battles that might not come for decades or centuries. The species that had chosen peace for 3,000 years had chosen war instead, and they would never choose peace again. The age of vigilant harmony had begun. Humanity would watch, humanity would wait, and if any species ever again dared to threaten human children, they would discover that some mistakes could only be made once. In the darkness between stars, human ships moved like shadows, carrying weapons that could crack worlds and burn suns. They were guardians now, protectors of the innocent, shepherds watching over a galaxy full of sheep, but they were also still human. And humans, when their young were threatened, had no mercy to give. The 3,000 years of peace were over. The age of human dominance had begun.